Guys, the last 24 hours in crypto have been the most brutal 24 hours I've ever seen in this industry. I've been in this industry for 10 years. I've never seen anything like what we saw in the last 24 hours. If you look at what the charts say, so this is what the bubbles look like, but this doesn't tell the story. You look at the liquidations; they're talking about $19 billion worth of liquidations in the last 24 hours. But that's not really the whole story, and I'll show you how these oracles were actually broken, and that this doesn't tell the whole story. I've never been in crypto and never seen a day where you have tokens going almost to zero. I mean, just look at this. TON went to 55 cents. Lido went to 25 cents. Atom on certain exchanges, Atom, the Cosmos token, the Cosmos Atom token, actually went to zero. And it didn't go to zero on a small exchange. It went to zero on a big exchange like Binance. What we saw last night, what we saw in the last 24 hours was a systematic collapse of a certain sector in crypto. And I want to break it down for you. I want to show you exactly what happened. This was not a coincidence. This was a systematic collapse. Now, there's good and there's bad here, and I want to discuss both the good and the bad. I do see that a lot of traders have been liquidated, and probably a lot of our community have been liquidated. And if you have been liquidated, guys, don't feel bad. Well, I'm obviously going to feel bad, but this is one of the most brutal liquidation events ever to happen in crypto. Even the top 10 traders on Hyperliquid, these guys are the smartest traders out there. They lost $250 million, and 5 of them wiped out their entire account. Now, I can tell you, I spoke to some of the biggest traders in the game, friends of mine in the game, guys that these are the biggest whales out there, and they got completely destroyed last night. What we saw in the last 24 hours was a complete systematic collapse of a certain sector in crypto, and we need to discuss it. So question is, where are we now? What's the next step? Because what's happened in the last 24 hours is we've had a complete wipeout of the leverage. If you look at the total open interest on Bitcoin, the drop in open interest, and this just shows the amount of leverage that dropped in the last. So 31% of all the leverage on Bitcoin was completely wiped out. If you look at the total open interest on all coins, you basically went from $115 billion all the way down to $72 billion. It's a massive systematic collapse. Now, we do need to talk about something else here, because this collapse comes right at the end of what is supposed to be the 4-year cycle. So if you look at the 4-year cycle, and you look at the number of days from the beginning of the cycle theoretically to the end of the cycle, and you know this comes from the halving cycle, you can kind of see that we're in the range of potentially the end of the cycle. So if you go into 2017 and you say from the halving, how many days were there until the all-time high, and then the beginning of the bear market was 525 days. In 2020, the same thing happened, and we went from in 548 days, right? And then if you look at this cycle now, we're looking at the halving, and the question is whether this could be the end of the bull market. Because if you do look at the entire 4-year cycle, and you do measure the number of days, we could be seeing the end of the cycle, and that is something that we need to pay attention to. Why? Because when the bull market ends, there's no announcement that says, "Oh, it's the end of the bull market." It's in hindsight, it's kind of like, oh, that was the end of the bull market. But when a bull market ends, that's not there's no announcement, and so we do have to take into account that this could be a scenario. So we're going to cover all of that today. We're covering it here on Crypto Insider, which is a new channel. If you're not already subscribed to this channel, please subscribe now. If you are here, because we're not on the main channel, because there were too many streams on that main channel, subscribe to this channel. There's going to be a lot more content coming out on this channel. This is the channel where only run goes on this channel. Banter is where all the other hosts go, but this is specifically the channel that I've gone to. And if you are here, please just help me get a little bit of distribution. It's a unscheduled show on a Saturday. All you need to do is you need to smash the like button. That's pretty much what you have to do. Otherwise, yeah, let's get the show on the road. Let's get going. Let's talk about what happened and kind of what happened next. So let's look at the scenario. Let's look at the synopsis. What happened? Let's do a post-mortem on the events that actually happened. So it started off when Trump again posted something about China, and he spoke about China, and he said something along the lines of that they had done something untoward when it came to rare earth minerals. Now remember, China controlled the majority of the world's rare earth minerals, which are required in very sensitive production and stuff like that. And Trump came out and said that he couldn't believe something that China had done around rare earth minerals. He said, it has just learned that China, I have just learned, has taken an extraordinarily aggressive position in trade, in sending an extremely hostile letter to the world, stating that they were going to, effective November 1, impose a large-scale export control on virtually every product they make, and some not even made by them. This affects all countries without exception, and was obviously a plan devised by them a year ago. It's absolutely unheard of in international trade and a moral disgrace in dealing with other nations. Based on that, China has taken this unprecedented position and speaking only for the US and not for other nations who are similarly threatened. Starting 1 November, we're going to have tariffs. Now, this situation is very similar to what happened in February. Remember, in February, Trump had a tariff tantrum. And in February, when Trump had the tariff tantrum, we got Bitcoin. Let's just try and find a Bitcoin chart, and we'll go all the way back to Feb. So if you go back to Feb, you can see right here, that's when, or somewhere here, that's when we had the Trump tariff tantrum, and that started quite a long downturn. That was the day where we had all those big liquidations and everything else. And so that's how it started. Trump posted that. He also did a press conference, and at the press conference, initially, he threatened to cancel his meeting with President Xi, which he's supposed to have next month in November. And he's like, and then at the press conference, he's like, look, I mean, you listen to the press conference, you tell me what you make of it.
Just want to confirm, have you canceled your meeting with President Xi? And
no, I haven't canceled. So, but I don't know that we're going to have it. But I'm going to be there regardless, so I would assume we might have it. But, they hit the world with something that really is not anything that people are going to do, and it was shocking. I can tell you, Howard and I and Todd, we all Scott, we were all speaking about it before, and we said, where did that come from? It was just, that was out of the blue, right? Out of the blue, they came up with this whole import-export concept, and nobody knew anything about it. So.
If they roll back their export controls, the new announcement, would you roll back?
Look, we're going to have to see what happens. That's why I made it November 1st. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
So I mean, look, when I listen to that, all I'm hearing is a negotiation tactic. He's going to China in November to negotiate. China's obviously maybe played one card in terms of getting a negotiation tactic. Trump's doing the same, and we know what happens with these tariffs. He starts off very, very, very strong, and then he always scales back the tariffs, and or up until now, he's always scaled back the tariffs. So what happened when this happened? So initially, the market started to collapse. That's what happened to the S&P 500. That's pretty much the stock heat map of the S&P 500. If you look at it on a chart, what you can see is that the S&P 500 went down about 4%, so about 3.37%. It went down yesterday. The Nasdaq, similar story. I mean, these candles look scary, but ultimately, remember, we are coming from all-time highs, and the Nasdaq went down about 5% if you look at it from top to bottom. And that's like, I mean, that's a bad correction, but that doesn't explain what happened in the last 24 hours. I mean, as Tom Lee says in this interview, and I think you should just listen to the beginning part of this interview.
So we get it. We're still, the bull market we heard earlier, still intact. But your take on today's move and what may lie ahead?
Well, Brian, it may be overdue to an extent. We've had a nice rise of 36% since the April lows, and I believe today's decline is the biggest in more than 6 months. But it's good to see the VIX spike. The VIX spiked at 1.29% today. That's the 51st largest ever spike in the VIX. So we're a top 1% move in sort of what I'd say the market seeking safety. And so I think it's a good flush that's happening today. I would like to say the market is, concerned, but as your other guests have said, especially Rick, I mean, unless there is a real structural change, this pullback is a buying opportunity.
So
51st
so
biggest
talk
move
about-
for the VIX. So
we'll talk about that in a few seconds. But what you can see is that the VIX, which is the fear in the traditional markets, actually spiked here. Now let's talk about what happened to crypto, because as I said, the collapse that we had in the VIX or the spike that we had in the VIX and the collapse that we had in the stock markets doesn't explain what actually happened in crypto. What happened in crypto was much, much, much worse. We had a systematic collapse, and the systematic collapse primarily happened on the centralized exchanges. So what happened in the centralized exchanges was there were Oracle issues and there were API issues. And for those of you who don't know what that means, an Oracle is something that feeds pricing data to exchanges. Now, if there is an Oracle issue or an API issue, and the data that the exchange is getting is wrong, then traders start to get liquidated. And when the traders start to get liquidated, that causes a liquidation cascade. So if you've, for example, taken a long position on Solana, that means you've bought Solana on leverage, and your liquidation price is $180. And let's say Solana is trading at $200, but the Oracle, or by mistake, says that Solana hit $180, then what happens is your position gets liquidated. And as your position gets liquidated, it starts liquidating everybody else around you. And that's exactly what happened. I've never seen anything like this. It was a systematic collapse of the centralized part of crypto. It wasn't a systematic collapse of crypto at all. It was a systematic collapse of the centralized part of crypto. Now remember, we're all in this movement for decentralization, and I'll show you some good news later. I mean, I know there's not really a lot of good news that you can have on delegates, but I'll show you some good news later. It was a systematic collapse of the centralized part in crypto, and what you saw on centralized exchanges, centralized leverage exchanges, Bybit, BitGet, Blofin, Binance, those are all the centralized exchanges. You saw prices going very close to zero. Bitcoin on Bitfinex, which is one of the big centralized exchanges, went to $103,000, right? Arthur Hayes says, word on the street is that Big Sex's auto liquidation of collateral tied to cross margin position is why all the alts got smoked. Now, if you look at the alts getting smoked, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Aerodrome, 28 cents. 28 cents. I mean, Aerodrome is probably one of the most solid DEXs out there. On base, and for this to go from where it was a week ago at $1, at $1.20 or $1.60 in August, to go all the way down to 28 cents is unheard of. For TON to go to 55 cents from $3 or wherever it came from is completely unheard of. Injector from $14 a few days ago to $2.73. It is unheard of. And the problem is that when this happened, most people were sleeping. And when they woke up, they thought, okay, well, you know what? It is a correction. Like, I must admit, when I woke up, I said, okay, it is a correction. But I look at the top three coins, which is ETH, Bitcoin, and BNB. And I was like, okay, but ETH's at 3.8, Bitcoin's at 112, and BNB still above $1,000. That seems great. But that's not what the story was. Because in the middle of the night, we had the systematic failure of these oracles. And again, I want to mention to you that this is the centralized part of crypto collapsing. And even this is one of Binance's hotshot. I want to make sure that I get her. She's the co-founder and chief customer officer of Binance. Now, she came out and she said the following: due to significant fluctuations over the past 16 hours and a substantial influx of users, some users have encountered issues with their transactions. I deeply apologize for this. If you've incurred losses attributable to Binance, please contact our customer service directly. We will review your account individually, analyze the situation, and provide compensation accordingly. When else have you had a centralized exchange come out and say, we're going to compensate you because of what actually happened last night? That to me says something big happened with the centralized exchanges. This is not natural. This is not natural. And this is going to bring me to my next point. Well, before I get to the next point, let's just talk about this. Someone said, just to describe how insane this crash was, anybody who had leverage of over 1.5x was completely wiped out. I've never seen altcoins go down 99%, like on one day. This is the craziest thing that I've ever seen in my entire life, and I've been here for 10 years in crypto. I've never seen anything like it. If you got liquidated, if you had leverage and you got liquidated, you're not alone. I mean, let's try and find the actual number. I know it's somewhere. I think if you look somewhere here, 1,670,000. This is what they're reporting. Now remember that this site is wrong. Why is this site wrong? Because this site gets its data from the exchange APIs, and the CEO of Bybit, 𝗫𝗫𝗀, has actually come out previously and said that the data here is not actually correct. So this data shows that over 1 million people, 1.67 million people were liquidated. Those people are gone. Big accounts wiped out. Top 10 traders on Hyperliquid wiped out completely. These are not small fish. Everybody got wiped out. Here. So it was a systematic collapse. Now I want to give you just an idea of how big this collapse was. And again, we can't say that this data is correct, because I know that the data that they feed to CoinGlass, where everybody is calling this off, this data is not correct. But I just want to give you an idea of how big this was, right? Today's liquidation, according to CoinGlass, which again I say is not correct, $20 billion. 19th of May, China fought $8.5 billion. Terra Luna collapsed, $3 billion. COVID, $3.8 billion. So this collapse was 6 times or 5 times the size of COVID. And this collapse was almost 10 times the size of the FTX collapse. So again, if you lost a lot of money, you're not alone. A lot of people. And I must say, I really feel your pain, because I've been here before. If you lost your account today, or if you lost a lot of your money, if you lost more than 50% of your portfolio today, I must tell you that I feel your pain. I've been there. I've been there in 2021 or 2022 when Luna collapsed, and I lost over 55% of my portfolio. But you know what I did? I picked myself up, I dusted myself off, and I rebuilt my portfolio from scratch. And I'm going to take you through that in a couple of seconds. This was very, very, very big. As this guy says, Apro says, COVID crash, 1.2 billion liquidation, FTX crash, 1.6 billion, and today $20 billion of liquidations. Everybody, more than 1,000 wallets on Hyperliquid were completely wiped out. Now we have to talk about the option that this is the end of the bull market, because as I said to you guys before, I don't. When bull markets end, it's not like everybody knows the bull market's ending. What happens is something happens, and then the prices start going down, and then in hindsight, people go, "Oh well, that was the end of the bull market." And if you look at historical bull markets, I just want to take you back to a bull market of. This is the 2021 bull market. This is November. This is when FTX started to collapse. There was no announcement here that that's the end of the bull market. Everyone thought there was just one exchange collapsing, and then it just went down and down and down and down and down and down, and that's what basically took us down to the bottom. So we have to be responsible and say, you know what, we don't feel like it's the end of the bull market. It doesn't seem like it's the end of the bull market, but it could be the end of the bull market. Why? Because if you look at the number, every time they say this time is different, it's not different. Now, this guy tweeted, he posted this on Reddit. He said, if you look at the pattern would bring the cycle's all-time high to the 6th of October. And if you go back to the Bitcoin chart and you look at when the all-time high actually happened on the Bitcoin chart, that was the 6th of October. And that is what happens when you take the data. So if you look over there, that's the, let me just make it a bit bigger so you guys can actually see it there. That is the 6th of October. So 6th of October was the Bitcoin all-time high. Now you could say it's coincidental, right? You could say, like, if you say all-time high, 2015 to 2017, 1,064 days, back to the all-time low, back to the all-time high. So 1,064 days after the all-time low will bring us back to October 6th. I assume that he's taking the all-time low in 2023, which is somewhere over here. I'd imagine that he's using this all-time low over here, and then he's going exactly, there we go. That's exactly that, 1,064 days. So it could be the end of the bull market. I don't think it is. If you ask me right now, and I'm going to show you something in a second. To me, it's not the end of the bull market, but it would be amiss of me to tell you that it's impossible. It's highly unlikely, in my opinion, but it's not impossible. And every time we say this time is different, this cycle is different, and every time the cycle is exactly the same. If you look at the halving chart actually says that the 8th of October would have been the peak. That is if this cycle is the same as every other cycle. Now, look, you could say, but we haven't had a blow off top. We haven't had retailers coming in. If you look at indices like the what we call the CBBI index, which is, it's just a combination of 9 other indices, right? If you look at this index over here, it doesn't show that we've topped. In fact, it's somewhere around 78, right? But again, I would be irresponsible if I said to you guys, it's bull market, bull market, bull market, you should be buying. If you ask me what my personal opinion is and the moves that I'm making, well, let me show you the moves that I'm making. So first of all, in fact, before I tell you the moves that I'm making, I want to give you some positive news. So I've given you all the bad news. I've told you how people got wiped out. I've told you it was a systematic collapse of the centralized part of crypto. I want to give you some good news, right? And some bad news, right? So the good news is that what we realized in this systematic collapse is which chains can handle and which chains can't handle, and which platforms can handle and can't handle. Because remember, if you want to build the future of finance and you want to build the future of finance using blockchain, then the future of finance needs to be able to withstand stress tests. And this was the ultimate stress test. Now let's look at what happened in this stress test. Who passed and who failed? That's important. So who passed? Well, and who failed? Who failed? The centralized exchanges. Systematically, they collapsed. Now, you have to ask yourself whether this was a coordinated move by the centralized exchanges to liquidate some of their clients. It can happen. I'm not saying it did. I'm saying it can. Because remember, they make money on liquidations. Again, I'm not saying it did. I'm saying it can. The big winner here, in my opinion, were two things. The first thing, the big winner was the DEXs. Because if you watch the DEX trading on chain, the DEXs actually didn't have as many issues as the CEXs, right? The CEXs were the ones that were the centralized exchanges. They were the ones that were having the issues, and the DEXs actually handled pretty well. Like Hyperliquid was working pretty well. If you looked at other exchanges, right? If you looked at other exchanges, what you would have seen was a lot of them had login issues. A lot of them you couldn't trade. The DEXs worked perfectly. The chains worked perfectly. So that's the first thing, the big winner here. And to me, like the one thing that I take away from this correction as like a silver lining is, the silver lining for me is the DEXs, which are the on-chain decentralized exchanges, performed better than the CEXs. And this whole movement is actually about removing centralized touch points and making decentralized touch points. And so when the decentralized touch points, Hyperliquid, Asta, all of them perform better than Binance and Bybit and Bitget and whatever else, you say to yourself, wow, this really could be the future of finance. And for me, that is one of the good things about this correction. The second good thing about this correction is that we kind of saw which chains can handle and which chains can't handle. And what happened was, I think Solana passed the ultimate stress test. So over the last 4 hours, Solana demonstrated resilience under extreme demand. Raw transactions spiked to 6 to 10,000 per second. Nothing actually happened. There was a tweet by 𝗏, and I'll try and find you the tweet by 𝗏. He's a big Solana bull, obviously. And he said something like, I actually want to just see if we actually got it over here. Just want to see if we got it over here. He mentioned something about Solana and how well Solana actually performed. On the converse, when we needed ETH the most, it was costing $1,500 a transaction to get a transaction through on ETH. And that shows you where the future of finance may be built and where the future of finance probably shouldn't be built. Because can you imagine that we were now in the future of finance? And here we go. So yeah, there's this one here too that people are talking about. Solana hits 100,000 transactions per second in yesterday's largest stress tests. At the same time, ETH gas fees were $1,500 a transaction. Now again, will Wall Street be willing to pay $1,500 a transaction on ETH mainnet? Absolutely not. Can they trade the side chains? Yes, of course they can trade the side chains. But we are seeing now, in times of extreme stress, that's when you know when something works and something doesn't work. All chains work when there's no stress on the system, but you want to overload the system. And Solana did fantastically well. So the two good things for me, Solana did very, very, very well. And the decentralized exchanges performed better than the centralized exchanges. The bad, obviously, this was a systematic collapse. It wiped out a lot of traders, and it's going to take a long time to get those traders back. This isn't something that's going to spike tomorrow and we're going to get an all-time high tomorrow. It's not going to happen. Why? Because we have destroyed 1,671,000 traders, including some of the biggest traders in the world. These are the big whales, and they are liquidated. Their entire accounts are liquidated. That's not money that just comes back in. That's not money that they're not going to miraculously find money tomorrow. So if you're thinking that this market and the altcoins are going to recover in the next 24 to 48 hours, no, it's not going to happen. It didn't happen last time. In fact, if you look at the last time we had a systematic collapse like this, that was February. It took us, let's just look at how long it took us from the correction, which was about here. It was here. And let's look at how long it took us to get back to the same place. It took us 114 days. It took us 3 months in a raging bull market to get people back in. So don't think that we're going to jump to all-time high tomorrow. That I can tell you is completely out of the question. So what is going to happen? Well, I don't know what's going to happen and when. As I said to you, it could be the end of the bull market. I doubt that it is. However, it would be amiss of me not to tell you that it's a possibility. But I don't think so. I think that this is one of the best buying opportunities ever in crypto. And Alex Becker here agrees with me. He says, COVID crash, 1.2 billion liquidations, FTX crash, 1.6 billion. Yesterday, 19 billion. The first two were literally the best days in the last decade to buy. Yesterday will probably be the third. And yesterday, I also mean, by yesterday, I actually also mean today. So why do I say that? Because everybody's fearful. Everybody's wiped. This is mass panic. This is a black swan in crypto. What we had in the last 24 hours was a black swan in crypto. It's never happened before, and probably chances are it's never going to happen, or it will probably happen again, but not at this scale. Everybody's fearful. Everybody's liquidated. And that is the time when you want to be buying. Now, I know you're scared, but I want to call up this tweet where I bought Solana at $10 on January the 3rd, 2023, when Solana hit $8 that day. There was a mass liquidation of Solana, and I went and I started buying, and I started to publicly post that I was buying, and you can see that was one of the best trades of my life. I know that today is painful. I know that everyone's scared. I've been there before. I've lost my entire portfolio many times. I lost my portfolio I lost more than $100 million in 2021 and 2022. I know exactly how you feel, and I probably know much, much, much worse how you feel. I don't think you should get in and take leverage. I'm not telling you right now to take leverage, but I'm telling you that if you do have money, and if you were planning on buying, and if you did keep cash aside, you're not going to get another opportunity like this for a long, 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 long time. This is a systematic collapse. It's a black swan. And if you're not investing when there are black swans, then you probably shouldn't be investing in crypto. Then you're a retail investor. Then what are you waiting for? You're waiting for an all-time high. This is as bad as it's going to get. So if you were thinking of investing, if you had money on the sidelines, this is the time when you need to start deploying. Do you need to deploy it all today? Absolutely not. Because there could be round 2 here. They could take us out for round 2. I don't think there will be, by the way, but it could happen. We could carry on bleeding just like we did in February. It could happen. I don't think we will. But remember, in February, we spiked and we actually bled and we made a lower low here. I don't think that's going to happen. But I have been saying for a very long time that we're going to get a correction. And I kind of said that for me, this correction is only going to end when, number one, we're convinced that it's the end of the bull market. And number two, when we get to prices that look somewhere like this. This is no longer, this is September 26th. I said this correction will only end when we are all convinced that was the end of the bull market, and that it lined up perfectly with the end of the bull market. And I said my buy list is 95 to 98k, 3,200 on ETH, and 145,000 on Sol. Most of those targets have actually been hit. In fact, I also posted this, and I said, this was on August 29th. I said 95,000 on Bitcoin and 3,500 on ETH. Most of those targets have actually been hit now. Now the shake is over. Now you've got to choose a team, and you've got to say, okay, either you believe this is the end of the bull market, in which case you should probably tap out and come back here in I don't know, 300 days. Or you believe that this is a black swan and that we're going to bounce. I believe that this is a black swan and that we're going to bounce. And I'm going to make another video, and I'm going to drop it on this channel to show you exactly why this is not the end of the bull market, right? But in the interim, I'll try and drop that video tomorrow or even the next day. So this is a tweet that I posted on the 22nd of September. Wasn't even a month ago. I said, if this was a flush, it's almost over. if this was a correction, it hasn't even started yet. And now those tweets basically feel a little bit prophetic because I knew this correction was coming. We probably won't get the fear and greed reading today, but I always said to you guys, I only buy when we get to periods of extreme extreme fear. And I believe that when this indicator refreshes today, we're going to be in extreme fear. I think it's going to be much, much, much worse than where it is today. All the things say that we are now bottomed or bottoming, and this is the time to buy. I posted in Frontrunners today and I said, look guys, look, I said, good morning. That was brutal. Reminded me of Feb when Trump did this with tariffs. The good news is the worst is over. We know that this is a negotiating tactic and he won't follow through. That's how Trump operates. My prediction is that we will hit an all-time high a month, I think probably a month or two from now. I don't think it's the end of the bull. I started deploying. Unfortunately, I was asleep when the prices hit close to zero, but I did deploy into the majors. 𝗠cie, Hyperliquid, Solana, Pump Fun, Mantle. Athena was the biggest deployment that I've done, and 𝗥𝗄. And then I've deployed a little bit of money in Fluid. They could go lower. We could get a situation like this, and that's why I only deployed 33% of my cash. I didn't deploy all of my cash because we could get a situation where we go down, we bounce up, and we go down again. One of these double bottoms before we actually top. Ben Cowan, who's been very, very, very accurate in the cycle, he says Ethereum's now dropped 30% and has touched its bull market support band. I think now ETH can rally to new all-time highs. I don't see a top. I haven't seen retail coming in here. I haven't seen everything spiking, blah, 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 blah. I think it's time to be buying. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm saying to you again, I'm telling you what I'm doing. That's what I do on this channel. If you want to join us, this is my channel. Subscribe to this channel. If you've been here and you've enjoyed the emergency broadcast, then hit the like button. Help me get distribution of this. I'm going to be here much more often now to walk you guys through this. As I mentioned to you, I know what you guys are going through. I've been through this. I've been through this multiple times. My story is very public. I lost a lot of money on Luna. I destroyed myself on Luna. I lost a lot of money in February when the oracles, when again we had mass liquidations. I know exactly what you're going through. You got two choices now. You're either going to throw in the towel and leave crypto and come back when we get close to new all-time highs, or you're going to man up and you're going to become a real investor and you're going to start buying bottoms like real investors do. And I can only share, I'm not giving you advice, cold advice. I can only share my own personal experience, and I'm going to share it for you with screenshots. And I've got hundreds of these screenshots. Buy in panic. Solana was $13. That's Solana was $13. Here it is. Here's when I started buying. This is the screenshot that I actually bought. That was my aggregated entry price on the entire position. That one trade took my entire portfolio back to where it was. One Solana trade took me to where I was. So you got to block out the emotion and you got to think to yourself, what happened? It was a systematic collapse of the centralized part of crypto. The thesis for crypto hasn't changed. Crypto is still the future of finance. Solana is still going to be an amazing chain. Athena is still going to be an amazing thing. Pump is going to revolutionize creators. Nothing has changed fundamentally. Nothing has changed fundamentally. You have to block out the noise. And I think I saw something today from Raoul Pal. And I always lean to Raoul Pal because I think he's a very rational investor. He's also a good friend. And I think he's been quite calm here. And he said, look, no leverage, no FOMO, top 3 to 5 assets, main bag. He says, all of this is noise if you don't use leverage. There are only two questions you need to ask yourself. Will tomorrow be more digital than today? Has the liquidity cycle and the business cycle topped, or is it still rising? If the answer is yes to both, then this is all noise. If your time horizons are long time horizons, then the second part is just noise. Don't fuck this up. And that's what I'm saying to you now. Don't fuck this up. You have a opportunity of a lifetime to start buying. I'm willing to guarantee you that in the future, the prices are going to be higher than they are today. I don't think that you should go all in on leverage. If you're scared, And if you're scared and you want to trade an account, I've got a nice idea for you here. You can go to Bitfunded. The reason why I say that is because Bitfunded allows you to trade with other people's money. So, if you blow up your account, they've got a one-step evaluation at the moment. I'll show you how it works, basically. So Bitfunded is what they call a prop trading firm. It allows you to trade with other people's money. So if you want to trade a $100,000 account, you basically go here, you click on $100,000. You pay, okay, let's look about $10,000 account. You pay $99, right? Or $149. And if you can trade and make 10%, which you would have been quite easy today, you can, the next stage, you're trading with other people's money. So if you've been liquidated and you don't have money to put in, maybe go and trade on Bitfunded, because that's how you can trade with other people's money. Again, I'm trying to give you ways to try and make your money back. But if you have got spot money, now's a great time to deploy. If you haven't got spot money, go to Bitfunded, play with somebody else's spot money. Otherwise, yeah, that's it. That's what I can tell you today. I've got to get onto a flight, unfortunately. That's why I keep looking at the clock. I have to get onto a flight. I just ran in here to try and give you guys some support, to give you guys a bit of a helping hand. I'll be back here tomorrow, and I'll try and be back here on Monday, and I'll guide you through it step by step. If you want more, when I'm on the plane and stuff like that, I'm always live in Frontrunners. I know some people are members of Frontrunners. If you're not, there's a link below somewhere here. You can sign up if you want. That's where I'm going to be as live as I possibly can. In fact, actually, in 10 minutes while I'm on the way to the airport, we are jumping onto a call with the Frontrunners. Again, if you lost a lot of money and you lost your portfolio and you need help, and I'm not a financial help, because I'm not starting to cover people's losses. But if you feel bad, if you're part of our community and you feel like you're in a bad place, DM me on Twitter. I'll try and have a look at my DMs, and I'll try and reach out to you and help you with some, comforting words and maybe some strategic support and stuff like that. Don't tell me to fund accounts. I'm not going to be funding accounts. I just want to be here for the community, because I know how tough it was when this happened to me. I know how tough it was when I almost lost everything. And it's a cold and dark place. And the reason why it's a cold and dark place is because your friends don't understand. Your wife doesn't understand. Your parents don't understand. They think, they don't get it. They don't understand that yesterday was a systematic collapse. They think that it's gambling. They think that crypto is a pile of shit. It's not like that. It was a systematic collapse. I want to try and be here for as many people as possible. If you need help, please reach out to me. Otherwise, I'll see you guys again tomorrow. And if you're in the Frontrunners, I'll see you guys in Frontrunners. And if you're trading, this is the time, guys. Trade well, my friends.